Hey there, everyone. I'm Tony from Marathon Mates. This week, we're talking about the London Marathon. Now, for our regular listeners, it's 5 o'clock in Boston, and our regular co-hosts, Tim and Tara, are getting ready to run that iconic race. But today, I've got two very, very special guests joining me to talk everything London Marathon. A London Marathon is next week. So we'll hear about the history of the event, the course itself, and of course, you're going to hear all about our experiences from London 2022. Are you ready to run? Let's go.
Welcome to the thrilling world of the Flying RuNR, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to the Flying RuNR Podcast. This is our 42nd episode. Now, it's a pretty special time of the year. We've got Boston. We're recording this on the day of the marathon. It's 5 o'clock in Boston, and Tim and Tara and our good friend Lucia Benko are currently preparing to catch the buses out to Hopkinton and start that iconic race. But following right on the hot on the heels of Boston, we have the London Marathon. So we're going to talk all things London. And because Tim and Tara are in Boston and we didn't think it was fair that we grabbed them at 5 o'clock to run an episode, I'm absolutely stoked to be joined by Stephen and Kim Tudjman, who, by a freak coincidence, achieved their six-star medal alongside Sharon and I at the Tokyo Marathon. So I think this is the very first time that we've ever had 3 six-star medalists on our show. So welcome, Kim and Steve.
Welcome.
And how are you? Have you come down from the massive achievement that is the six-star?
Good question, Tony. I think it's a bit anticlimactic in the sense that you've achieved something that is quite special and you're left with wondering, well, what's next? So it's not an uncommon reaction. So that's kind of where I'm at.
And for me, I've got the World Age Group Champs coming up in September in Sydney. So I've got a bit more of a focus than Stephen has at the moment. Yeah.
Do you still have your medal there, Kim? Show it to the viewers. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Kim's in reverse.
Medal.
And what was your biggest and best memory of Tokyo, guys?
For me, I know a lot of people didn't really like the idea of the little dog legs going out and back. But for me, when those front runners passed me when I was at 17 Ks, that was a huge buzz. I really enjoyed being able to clap the lead runners going past me. Yeah, I found that was very enjoyable.
And Steve?
I had mixed feelings about Tokyo. I was very apprehensive going into it because of all those very tight, seemingly tight sort of time zones that you needed to meet, particularly given that we were at the back of the pack. So we didn't start till almost half an hour after the gun went. But equally, I think it was a great day because the weather was just absolutely stunning. The crowd, the volunteers on the course were magnificent. I've never experienced that number of volunteers at any race I've ever done, and it was a different race in the sense that because you had to focus on the time intervals, mentally it was a very different approach for me, which I'll talk to, I can go into a bit more detail later.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of stress around all those cutoff times and everything. And I know that Sharon and I were hot on your tail for most of that marathon. So the reality is that if you were going to miss, we were well gone. So But it was a strategy, wasn't it? So how did you prepare for the strategy? I know it's not London, but let's talk a little bit about Tokyo. It's the first time we've talked to you guys since then. So how did you prepare, Steve?
I focused, and thanks to you, I think it was a post that you'd done on Facebook where you'd sort of repeated the times and a card somebody had done with the milestones, the time of day you had to make, and what average pace you needed to do based on whether you got across the line 20 minutes after the start or 30 minutes after the start. So I made up a couple of those, got them laminated at my local sort of store, had a little card, and I carried the card with me, and I used that religiously throughout the race. And what I found, what was different about Tokyo compared to any other marathon or Ironman that I've done, was that I was focused on the intervals, not really the end time that I wanted to do, but on those intervals. And in some respects, whilst it was daunting going into it, it was actually quite enjoyable, because as I kept meeting the milestones and achieving the milestones along the way, that gave me a lot of sense of within the race. I was actually creating some sort of wins throughout the race, the win being at the end of the day, getting the time I wanted to do. So whilst it was daunting, it was also on the other side of it, it was actually quite enjoyable.
Yeah, it was actually. I know the sense of relief that Sharon and I had when we hit the 34K mark, because I think that was the one that was doing our head in. And to get there with like 40 minutes to spare, it felt like we were crossing the finishing line. But then the only drama, we still had 8K to go to finish the thing. So, yeah.
It's funny. I've got a good friend of mine who's a fellow Ironman, Peter and Trudy Needs, who are also on the bus heading to do Boston. And Peter went into the race with an injury. And he got to about the 32K mark and realised that unless he significantly picked up the pace, he was going to miss the cutoff. And for a guy who's in his early 70s, he defaulted back to his race pace of 20 years ago, and he literally went from, I think, an 8-minute pace to a 5-minute pace for the next 5 kilometres to well and truly be able to make the cutoff. And for me, what was the best thing about Tokyo was that all of the Aussies that were part of the Travelling Fit group, we all got home. And Peter was the one that probably inspired me the most afterwards, because he really dig deep to make those cutoffs at the latter part of the race.
Yeah, fantastic. So what is next, though? So we've heard that Kimmy's got the World Age Champs in Sydney, and Kimmy, Sharon and I are running Sydney as well this year.
Fantastic news.
Good stuff.
Stephen will be there too. He's
I'm doing the sweeper
job
on the course.
Okay.
So myself and John, who's a Spartan, Melbourne Spartan marathoner, will be there helping everybody get home at the end of the race in September. But it means that instead of pulling a chain across the road, as we did in Tokyo, it's about getting into people's heads along the course and just understanding what their strategies are and just giving them encouragement along the way. And hope they can get home under the cutoff time.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a much more encouraging approach, isn't it? So fantastic. Hey, now it's time for the news. And the only news that I am going to share at 5 a.m. in Boston, Tim and Tara are having a wonderful time. If you've been looking at some of the videos on our socials, on our Facebook, they ran the 5K. You both would have run the 5K last year in Boston.
Yeah.
What a great race it is too, isn't it?
Fantastic. It was a great race.
And so both the Ellises ran 32:05, so that would have been a very comfortable run for Tim and Tara as well. And our friend Lucia, aiming to beat 6 hours for the first time. It's her 6th star in Boston, and she wants her 6th star, and she wants to complete it in under 6 hours. So, Lucia, we are just sending you every little bit of strength and luck and everything. Whatever you need, we've just sent it to you, because she ran 37:49 for the 5K, and she was pretty comfortable with that, she was saying. and she ran most of the way. And as you know, Stephen, Lucia is a run walker. And so you've got this Lucia.
My hope for her is that she reaps the rewards of all the encouragement she gave as a pacer at the Sydney Marathon last year, helping people get home. May all that come back to reward her tomorrow or today.
Boston time. Today. By the time we wake up tomorrow morning, the race will have been won and run, and we'll be seeing the results. So let's hope everyone, once again, a smaller travelling fit component over there for Boston, because they do have less numbers than what they normally do with their other marathons, but it looks a really good group. So I'm wishing everyone that's there. But we're here to talk about London, aren't we? Because we ran London in October 2022.
Correct.
Yeah.
And this was after it. Sorry?
The week after Berlin for us.
I was just about to say it was part of a marathon tour that you guys did, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was number 3 marathon in the same amount of weeks, 3 weeks. Yeah.
It was the Marathon du Médoc.
Yeah.
Then we did a 150-kilometre walk on part of the Camino all the way down sort of in France. And then we did the Berlin Marathon, and then a week later did London.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then you went home and fell down 3 steps.
Yes, I did. I had an accident, not because I'd done so many races, because I was careless. Carrying a set of stairs and tore my quadricep tendon out of the kneecap, which set me back a bit.
Hey, do you guys know much about the history of the London Marathon? I know you're both students, and I know Kim's a history teacher. Of course,
I'm probably going to fall short of that one too.
Yeah, ditto, mate. I'm sure you.
I do know there's historic sites on the way around. That's for sure.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the course and your memories of the course, but Tim would kill me if I didn't go through some of the history of the London Marathon. So it was first conceived by Chris Brasher, who was a former Olympic athlete. The inaugural marathon was held on March 29, 1981. So we talk about Boston is the 128th edition of the Boston Marathon. This one's only been going, 22 years? 42 years. 42. Yeah. First race attracted 7,000 participants, started in Greenwich and finished in Buckingham Palace. So I don't think much has changed there. It starts in Greenwich and finishes at Buckingham Palace. It emerged as one of the major events in the world, and it's one of the largest races, I believe, for charitable, for people running for charity. So the event has raised hundreds of millions of pounds for various charitable causes since its inception. So it is just an amazing race. And of course, we were so privileged ourselves to be able to run it in 2022. We were due to run it, I think, in 2020 as well. But of course, we just ended up doing it virtually, and London, being London, still sent us the medal. So I really hold that memory as well. So let's talk about the course, and let's talk about some of your memories. So, but before we go on to the course, what were your favorite memories of London by itself? So, because you guys spent a bit of time in London, and we were in the center of the city.
I liked the lead up to the run. I know they didn't have a 5K run to do like most of the majors do, but it was really nice to get out and do runs along the Thames or go out to Hyde Park and do some runs around there. I really enjoyed that lead up to the race. But we also got out to Maple Durham, which is near Reading, and we did a half marathon trail run out there, which was really good as well. Yeah.
As part of the lead up, is just as a hit out before.
That was before we got to Medoc and started our.
Yeah.
But no, it was lovely out there.
Just half marathon to lead into 3 marathon.
Park run as well at Burgess, was it? Burgess Park Run in the city. We enjoyed that too. It was the biggest park run I'd ever been to. So not as big as the original one.
We've been lucky enough to go to London a few times. And every time you go back, it's always special. Everything about London, the iconic parts of London. So you spoke, Tony, before about Buckingham Palace, spending time there, not realising at that stage the Queen was not well. We actually, a couple of days before the race, there's a changing of the guard, and there was a lot of people there. We knew she wasn't in residence.
Yeah.
It was a spectacular day. There's just something about...
That was our first time there before we came back to do the marathon. Yeah.
And there's something about sort of that part of London, as well as the parks that lead up to and that surround it, itself, all of the new development that they've done on the other side where the London Eye is, the actual city itself, the business district. There's just so much to see. It's all within walking distance, all catching the tube. So it's always a great place to spend time, as well as finding some favourite watering holes like the Sherlock Holmes, which I highly recommend. Don't we?
Yes.
We had a beer down at a pub called the Water Rats Picnic down at I'm sure it's one of the seedier places in town. It was near one of the main train hubs, and that was quite an experience. But I love that sort of thing. So, and one of my memories was just some of those shakeout runs with Travelling Fit, just going across the Thames, running past the Eye, and it's everything's just there. Yeah, the first time you see Big Ben, for example, you're just thinking, I'm in London, and then you walk past Buckingham Palace, and it's just it's always awe-inspiring, isn't it? So
It certainly is.
And probably the other thing for me, Tony, like many of the majors you go to, is the people you meet. So when you're out doing your runs or walks and you're meeting fellow marathoners that have come from all different parts of the world, and the beauty of what an event like that will do to bring you all together. You come from different countries, background, ages, experiences, professions, but for those couple of days, it's the one thing you've got in common, and it's just wonderful sort of sharing stories.
Yeah, very much so. So the course itself is it's a point to point. So you jump on a bus and you head out to Greenwich, and then there's a number of different areas. What was your memories, Kim, of the start line and the starting areas themselves?
It's probably one of the ones I quite liked. It had a bit of a picnic feel about it to me, being out there on the grass, and they weren't very daunting corrals like some of the corrals that you have to get into. And I quite enjoyed the starting line out there. Yeah.
Steve?
Very open. There was a lot of room. The weather wasn't that flash. It was a big sort of drizzling rain, but it was still a good atmosphere. There was plenty of room.
Nice big screens up there that you could watch what was happening when the elite people took off. So passed the time as well.
Plenty of toilets, plenty of facilities. So it was actually quite comfortable. Comfortable as a start area at a marathon can be.
Probably a little narrow starting. Some of the streets were, but it didn't take too long to filter out. I did find some of the there were some very narrow parts on the course. That I really struggled with spectators almost right on top of you, and sort of you funneling everyone through some narrow bits. And I did struggle a bit with that. But and there were a couple of spots where you went down and back.
So you're getting ahead of yourself, Kim. We're still at the start line. That's all right. So but the big memory I had of the start line was the organisation. You dropped your kit bag on the trucks, and lo and behold, you thought it was a little bit like airline luggage. Was it going to be there when you finished? And yes, it was. So I thought that was very well organised. And you're absolutely right about the toilets. They were the best toilets in any of the majors in my eyes. They had the big open men's urinals, so you didn't have the men having to line up and holding women, and they even had those women urinals that I haven't seen anywhere else.
Oh,
So I just thought the start area was really, really good. And you mentioned the weather, which I find interesting, because everyone was talking about it was going to be a wet day. And it did start a little bit like that, but as we progressed through the race, didn't it? It just became a beautiful day. So
it was quite warm, I thought, in some places.
very much. Yeah, it was. It ended up being very warm for us anyway, because we were out in the course for a lot longer than you, Kimmy. So, but there was three. Was there 3 or 4 like separate starting areas, and then they all sort of merged at one stage?
I think maybe there was. It's not. I can't really recall. I just remember that we had 9 corrals that they kept filling.
Yeah.
So there was your 9 from 1 to 9 in that time slot, and then you'd go then 1 to 9 in the next slot they go. But I think I do remember now that there were colour differences for the start.
Yeah. And I think we all joined up at around the 5 or 3 to 5K mark. Don't quote me on that. But we're running past the Cuddy Sark. That was pretty impressive. Huge crowds through there. So
the crowds from the beginning were good, Tony.
Yeah.
I think, they talk a lot about the of all the majors, which of the majors have the best crowds, and they put London up there alongside New York and Chicago. So I was particularly looking to see what that experience would be compared to London, to New York, which I thought was phenomenal, and Chicago. And I was pleasantly surprised that there was a lot of crowd support right from the very beginning throughout.
Yeah, crowds were amazing. And, the crowd support was something that really sticks in my head. Something else that sticks in my head at London was Sharon had a wardrobe malfunction on the start line, and her sports bra popped, and it was being held on by the clip. And she decided to tell me once we'd gone 3K. And so we hurriedly did some repairs on the side of the road as best we could. We couldn't fix it, but Sharon ended up with this huge, like, red raw, where it all been, chafing against her. But I had to laugh just as she was saying, just as I've crossed the start line, pop. And I'm just thinking, okay, here we go. We're not in for a good day here, are we?
But it's about overcoming and adapting, isn't it? It's another example of,
if nothing else, we're resilient.
Yes. Now, Cuddy Sark was one of the first things that I remember really, really well, but Tower Bridge at around the halfway mark. Yeah.
That's a little bit like running into Central Park in New York. It's that same feel, just everybody cheering, everybody's there. That was an amazing feeling going through there.
I pulled out the phone and I took lots of video and photos as I went there, because it was very special. It was the photos and the videos, as obviously don't do it justice, the experience, but that was a real highlight.
Yeah. And we were so lucky that the photographers got a great shot of Sharon and I as we're coming over. And it was, it's only now been taken off all my phones with the Tokyo, the one with the 6-star medal. So, but iconic and just an amazing backdrop. But I found it interesting, as you're coming off over the Tower Bridge, you see runners going to your left, and we're being taken to our right. And I remember distinctly seeing something like a 21-mile sign for the runners that were going left. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, geez, we mustn't be far to go. But the Tower Bridge is 13 miles. So what that said is that we had 8 miles, and this is the part that you were talking about, Kimmy. Yeah. We're going right, and it's an out and back predominantly, or through the Canary Wharves, the Docklands, the financial district, and that's where it got a bit challenging, didn't it?
I found it was a hard race for me, the second half of that marathon. I was in the hurt locker a lot, so I did find that part challenging. After the Tower Bridge, things probably went a little bit pear-shaped for me, just pain-wise. But yeah, I've struggled with that because it was slightly uphill coming back again, and that's when I noticed the heat in the race as well. So I might not have noticed too many sights around that bit.
I was probably influenced by the number of people who said that it was going to be a sort of different part of the experience. It wasn't going to be as exciting.
Yeah.
And so to a large extent, I think I probably allowed that, what I had heard, to become the reality. It actually wasn't that bad. It was different.
Yeah. But the streets were narrower. There was some of the things that stick out in my mind were there was occasions where the sewage smell was quite overwhelming. But the crowds, as Kimmy was saying, were really crowding some of those narrow parts.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it was a little bit of a challenge. There was some underpasses. Do I remember an underpass? Yeah. So, but then we end up back at the Tower Bridge and we're running along, correct me, what did we call that area along the Thames? It's a, there is a name for it, but we go past the Tower Bridge again. We go past the Tower of London, and you know that you're getting close. It's about 21-mile mark, and it's pretty much, if I remember rightly, pretty much a straight run alongside the Thames.
Alongside the river, yeah.
There was at that point, sort of once you went past Tower Bridge, there was a lot more activity. There was a lot more music. So like there was at going through the Greenwich sort of area, the music reappeared. And there's one thing that I regret, which I actually haven't told you, but I actually ran past Anthony Joshua, the boxer.
Okay.
And I just remember turning around because people were stopping and running back to him to get selfies with him. I just saw how tall he was, and then I didn't recognise who it was until I saw somebody later and they said that's who it was, and I thought, I was driven by sort of trying to make a time instead of turning around and getting a selfie with somebody famous.
Here, you can have one with me.
But I just remember how tall he was. He was like a giant, and I thought he must have been a basketballer.
Yeah.
To me, he was a boxer.
And it was a boxer. Wow.
Yeah. Around that place, the music was just phenomenal.
Yeah. And you've got the Thames, you've got crowds. Yeah. I know this is the part around the 25-mile mark that Sharon saw our kids. And I think that was the time that she just sort of said, "Oh, it's too hard," or well, I think she used the old F-bomb, and the kids were videoing as Sharon was coming up, and Sharon drops the old F-bomb in describing how hard it's been. So,
I think that for me, I was able to pick up a bit of pace again once we got on that straight stretch, and I could just focus in front and. Roll the legs over, and I started getting a little bit more purpose into my running again, which I was happy about because I picked up my pace and was able to scrape in under 4 hours, which I thought was going to blow right out the window there at once.
Tony, if I may take a detour for a minute, talking about kids, it was actually wonderful to meet them in Tokyo. And I think you and Sharon are very lucky that they followed you around to some of these races to support you. And it would have been fantastic to see them, to run past them and see them there on the course.
Yes, it was. And I think every now and again, that's what you need. You need to see that friendly face, the person that you know. And as you know, Travelling Fit are always there with the kangaroo and what have you. And
those moments, Tony, I look at my watch and I go, in a K's time, they're going to be there and that's going to pick me up.
Yeah. And that's the awesome part, isn't it? When you do I guess with any sports travel company, but of course we love the team at Travelling Fit, and it's always that it picks you up. You see people in the crowd, and you keep going. But we're running past Big Ben, we're running past the Houses of Parliament. Is it the mall, that big line leading into the palace on the mall, that seemed to go on forever. Can I tell you, that just seemed to go on. Did you find that?
Yeah, it does.
I did.
And there were a lot of people actually, like I saw a few people actually collapse in that area just before the finish line. So it was like people sort of were like really, like I think at the end of it by then.
Yeah, maybe they put on the sprint a little bit too early, but yeah,
Yeah.
it just
They had that lean too, you know, and
Yeah. But then there was nothing like seeing that sight of Buckingham Palace come up on your left.
yeah,
And then you did the right-hand turn, and it was on your left. Then you did the other right-hand turn, and
Yes,
then
so
went down
yeah.
the straight, and you knew you were home.
yeah, yeah, and that it was a beautiful sight, and it was just a really awesome finish line to cross, and just a really iconic marathon to be involved in. So let's talk about the charity runners in the London Marathon. What was your favorite one that you saw, or potentially the one that you couldn't believe ran in that the whole way?
Well, I had the pleasure of talking to William Shakespeare.
William Shakespeare.
And he's a lovely, lovely fellow, and was probably from about the 25K mark.
Yeah,
And we kept doing this, you know, right until the finish.
yeah,
And he was out there. It had been a while for him to be able to sort of get the fitness to do the race. He had a very special story which he shared with me. It brought tears to the eyes.
Oh wow!
And it was a pretty special experience because there was a story behind the costume, behind, and I'm sure that there were, my memory there was a lot of people in fancy dress. Go back to the start. There was a lot of people in outfits that you thought that's going to be interesting doing a marathon in that. But William Shakespeare was probably my highlight.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, he actually looked like him as well.
No, he did.
And you got a selfie with him, no doubt.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
and you introduced me to him at the end of the race. Yeah.
What about you, Kimmy? The most intriguing one?
I can't remember. There were a couple at the start for me that were just, I couldn't see them. They were just in great big character suits or fruits, some fruits and things like that. Yeah. So I couldn't.
I still
hats off to them.
Yeah, I still remember the rhinos. The rhinos.
The South African.
Yeah.
I've had them. They were in front of me on the Great Wall of China. You can't get past a rhino on the Great Wall of China.
That would have frustrated you, no doubt, Kimmy.
The rhino, one of the rhinos, I caught him at about the 35K mark, about the 30K mark in the Great Wall, and the temperature had got to the mid-30s. And he was sitting on the sideline with his head off. He was cooked. He was done.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I can never understand that. But just as we were finishing, one of the firefighters or the SES workers who ran the whole thing in his full kit, carrying the stuff on his back, made me feel really good that he'd done that, but made me feel really poorly that he had the same finishing time as what we did. But it's incredible. I mean, you see so many people out there raising funds and just in characters. It's just an incredible event.
Yeah, and the fact that there are so many good causes out there that people are willing to train for and run a marathon, raise money to contribute to. It's very hard often to separate out, sort of, because there are so many good causes. But it sort of we take our hats off to them because they're pretty special people to do a marathon. The three of us do it, and Sharon, because we're a little bit crazy, they do it for a much more noble purpose.
Yeah, and we do take our hats off to them for sure. So after the marathon, we had our celebration drinks on a boat in the Thames, and that was interesting. We lost no one overboard, which was
that was one of the spots we ran past with about a couple of Ks to go.
Right.
Yeah, and we were all thinking that's where I'm going to be to have a beer. So now, before we pull up stumps for tonight, we've got to talk about the Expo. The London Expo this year is going to be held at the same place it was when we went in 2022 at XL in London. And once again, it's not in the centre of the city. It's out Greenwich Way, I believe. What were your memories of the London Expo?
I didn't mind where it was. It was right at the end of that new Elizabeth line, so it was easy to get to by train. I don't. Yeah, they just in usual fashion, they run out of the popular sizes fairly early. I actually ended up getting a bit of my gear from the flagship store. I went out into the city and went out, and they had sizes or shirts left there that they didn't have at the Expo. I don't buy a lot at the Expo, but if I see something I like, I want to get it. I don't buy it just for the sake of buying something. But I really did like that little orange shirt or yellow shirt they had. So
and that's a nice one you've got on.
Yeah,
there.
and
I
this
think
one here, I got this one too.
Yeah.
The
quality was good, I thought.
Quality was good. Yes, they ran out of sizes, but they did replenish.
Yeah.
I noticed when I went back there the second time, because I'm a bit of a compulsive
second or third
merchandise
time on his
person.
Unlike me.
And it was worth the trip out there. It wasn't that hard to get to once you sort of worked out.
It was a nice area,
the train
actually,
line.
I thought.
But it was quite good, and anything compared to Tokyo, anything that is going to be better than Tokyo, unfortunately.
Yeah, 3,000%. So I was lucky enough to get one of the black London jackets, and seriously, I wear it whenever I'm traveling. That's the jacket I wear on the plane because it's light enough to be cool enough.
Yeah.
But the pockets are huge and they've got zips on it. So you can just stuff your pockets filled with whatever you need and not have to worry about getting that in your carry-on so it doesn't get weight. So there's a tip. So, yeah. Outside of the what I remember about the Expo was lots and lots of people, of course. The New Balance area was just chock-a-block. But, you're right. Some of the more fashion-oriented items were very, very quick to go in certain sizes. And but, yeah, I think the Expo itself was actually quite good. It was one of the better ones that I've experienced.
It's like you could move around in it, which you couldn't do in Tokyo. Like,
well, there was no need to walk around Tokyo because they had nothing to offer, which was the disappointment thing around Tokyo. So, all right. So,
Tony, I should confess that in the theme of London, I'm actually going to do the London Marathon virtually next Sunday.
Awesome.
For some reason.
For those people listening on audio, Stephen just held up his virtual bib.
About 6 weeks ago, and I don't know what it was that prompted me. I thought I need a challenge. You asked me a question early on.
Yeah.
Next challenge, and this is just to get me back out to to cover the distance. And I gather from what Kim tells me, it's potentially an opportunity to then maybe get into the ballot for next year for London.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
Their virtual races are.
Yeah.
I would like to just add one little thing that I was disappointed about in the London race, and just because it might help people think about what they're going to take with them, is the electrolytes, the Lucasade. Sorry, can't speak about that.
No, you can. You're just sending shivers down my spine. That's all.
I'm not an orange flavored person at the best of times, but orange Lucasade, and I think what really got to me, it wouldn't have been so bad had they had it with the water stations, but they had their own separate stations. So people might want to think about taking something themselves if they don't like orange Lucasade. They only had 4 stops. And there was no water available with it, so you couldn't even water it down. So for me, I kind of wonder if it's one of the reasons I was having a bad time in the second half of the race, because I'm, by routine, it's water one station, electrolyte the next station.
Yeah.
I kind of work that way around my gels and that. And for me, that was like the only thing I really thought could have been changed for the race.
Yeah.
And they have a red one that tastes okay. It's just I just don't do orange flavor.
They also have a lemon lime that tastes okay too. And I have heard stories that people have had nightmares around the orange Lucasade being chased by giant oranges down there.
Yeah, that's another story.
Yeah, it was. And I'm glad you raised it because the orange, and the stickiness of the roads around some of those stations were just pretty tough. But I think by about the 21K, I could not fathom any more electrolytes. And, maybe that was part of the reason why Sharon then started to have some dramas as well. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
That sun came out and you were losing that salt and you don't realize.
Yeah. And that's one of the interesting things around Tokyo, and because they've got Bakari Sweat on course at Tokyo, and most people say that's quite a bland drink, but I had no dramas with Bakari Sweat the whole way through. So if I needed a drink, it was going down. There was no bitterness. There was no, geez, I hate this flavor, because it's quite bland. Some people say it's sweet, but to me it's bland. And I think marathons can learn from each other, because I think that you need some options with electrolyte drinks.
No, I agree. I think it was
I
fantastic.
agree with you. I had no problems with the Bakari at all. And there's plenty of it out there if you needed it.
And Tony, one thing that reminds me about the Tokyo course was one of the race rules was you cannot throw your gel on the road. If you were disqualified. And I'll never forget, virtually every 50 to 100 metres on both sides of the course was a marvellous volunteer in a yellow top with a plastic bag held out for you to actually put your discarded gel wrapper in. So there was no excuse for for all of the concerns around the cut-off times along the way. I think it was one of the best organised races that I've seen. It was just run like clockwork. So Japanese fashion.
Yeah, they bent over backwards. They just did everything for you.
Yeah, I love Tokyo organisation, except for their marathon, their Expo. They need to get that sorted. But in respect of that, the roads were beautiful. There was the smoothest bitumen that I think in any major. You compare the bitumen at Tokyo to Chicago, and I know, Kim, you've done Chicago twice, and it's chalk and cheese. You're dodging potholes in certain parts of Chicago, and it's just nice and smooth all the way through in Tokyo, except for the last kilometre where they decide to run it on cobblestones.
Yeah.
But you were coming to the end and okay.
So I agree, and those volunteers were just amazing, and you didn't have the dramas that you see in just about every other marathon. So the amount of people that went back to their home countries, whether it was the US, and just bemoaned the fact that their cities aren't as clean. And I just think, you need to have rules. And people need to live by the rules, and that was a lot of the angst that people felt around coming into Tokyo. There's so many rules. Why does it have to be this way?
Yeah, people were very stressed about what they could drink, what could they carry in there, what could they take, Yeah, and it was good because I've done plenty of races in America where people just throw what they've had straight at their feet, and it's a real problem.
Yeah, those gel packets become like ice in some parts of the course, especially when they're stuck to the bitumen with orange Lucozade. So, all right. So that was a bit of a trip down memory lane with the London Marathon. So with everyone that is running the marathon, we wish you absolutely every ounce of luck. You will enjoy it. It is a magnificent marathon. Yeah, take it in, take some selfies.
I think one of the majors that I would say, if I could just go back and do it and run it at a nice, gentle pace, I would do it again just to take it all in. I think that's the one I'd love to go and repeat.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be one of the top ones on my list to redo if I was to redo any of them. So, and as you know, I'm running New York this year, so that would be number one, and then certainly London would be number two, but it closely followed by Chicago, because Chicago is, apart from the potholes, an amazing environment. And once again, it's got a great 5K run, which I find interesting that London doesn't have that 5K as a bit of a shakeout run, but not that you are devoid of options. You can go to Bushy Park Run, which I know a lot of our contingent did.
Yeah.
And there's going to be that many influencers in London this weekend. All you have to do is go and Google Shakeout Runs London Marathon, and you'll find one with Kafusi and all the brands, and they're all over there. So got no doubt that people will be able to pick up an option for a shakeout run. So all righty. Well, thank you guys. Hang around. I'm just going to wind down the program, but thank you so much for joining us and taking a trip down memory lane. We will have to get you back on just to talk about your 6-star journey and go through each of those marathons. And I'd be really looking forward to chatting about that. Now, usually, as you know, we do a tip from Tim, and it's called Tim's Tip, and he does have a bit of a cult following. He is getting some infamy, but it's Tony's tip this week, and because Tim's not here. And my tip is all about preparing for the next marathon block. And I'll be interested to hear from you, Kimmy, if I got this right. So I'm 12 weeks away now from the Gold Coast Marathon, and it's time that I'm starting to ramp up. So tip number 1, assess your fitness level. Find out where you are. Then I do that by doing what I call a base run. And so this weekend I'll be running a 10K fun run called Run Army. And that's going to give me my base run. I'm going to understand where I'm starting from. From there, I'm going to build my mileage gradually, whether it's 2 or 3 kilometers. I know Tim and Tara always talk about going up in increments of 3. I'm going to prioritize a couple of sessions of strength and stretch training and, maybe a little bit of stability. I've really got to improve my balance. So that's an area. And the last 2 tips, of course, I want to be consistent in what I deliver. I need to get into that consistency mode. And the final tip is I'm going to listen to my body. So I'm starting to ramp up for my next marathon block, and they would be the 5 tips. Assess my fitness levels, build my mileage gradually, prioritize strength and stability, focus on consistency, and listen to your body. How'd I go, Kim?
I think that's fantastic. And just add that one, I always tell you, racing is the best form of training.
We talked about that after the Tokyo one, because I know that you missed the chance to say that in your episode. And by the way, everyone, I should have mentioned this right at the beginning, but Stephen and Kim have both been on our show before. Kim came on in episode 19 to talk about the World Age Champs that were in Chicago. And of course, Steve was here in episode 12 to talk about the Sydney Marathon. It seems so long ago, guys. We're now at episode 42. So, next...
Life, the universe and everything, according to Douglas Adams.
Very I saw that right at the beginning.
Very apt that we're talking about the London Marathon.
Yeah.
All right, so next week on the show, I'm going to be parceling up some of the live footage that Tim and Tara have put together at Boston. And there's a bit of background noise on that. I might just throw that in, but it's great to see the live footage, and I'm looking forward to putting all that together for our episode. And then, of course, from then, Tim and Tara will be back, and no doubt we'll be talking about and doing a review of the Boston Marathon. So thank you again, Stephen and Kim. It's been awesome having you join us tonight. And, you are always welcome. So the time, just pop on in and say g'day every now and again. It'd be great to see you. So
we're looking forward now to seeing you in Sydney as well.
Yeah, it's going to be, I am so looking forward to Sydney, because the changed course is going to be very, very interesting. So I think we're staying on that side, the other side. We're staying on the starts line side. And because Sharon says it's only a 1K walk back after the finish. So hopefully she's got it all right. No doubt she will.
Jump on the train.
She'll be fine.
Anyway, that wraps up our episode of tonight. So video of this episode is available on Spotify and YouTube, and audio, of course, is on Apple, Amazon, and most popular podcast platforms. If you've liked this episode, please leave a comment, let us know what you think. Is London on your bucket list, or what were some of your memories out of the London Marathon? Let us know. But remember, every step forward is a victory. Lace up, hit the road, and we will catch you on the next episode of the Flying RuNR Podcast. Until then, happy running.
Bye-bye.
Happy running.